Today I'm joined by General Kevin Schneider, Commander of Pacific Air Forces, General John LaMontagne, Commander of Air Mobility Command, Lieutenant General John Healy, Chief Air Force Reserve and Commander, Air Force Reserve Command, and Lieutenant General Dave Rock Miller, Commander of Space Operations Command, to discuss just how our airmen and guardians are exercising for great power competition. So, gentlemen, thanks very much for being here today. What we'd like to do is give you the opportunity to give us a couple of minutes on your perspectives on this topic, and then we'll jump into some questions. So, General Schneider, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, General Dotula, I really appreciate the opportunity to be up here and to do this. I'll keep my comments brief and for the sake of the discussion, but when I look around at the challenges of the problems that we collectively face, and I think it's really important to recognize that the solutions to the challenges in the Indo-Pacific don't necessarily all fall on my shoulders. It is a team effort in terms of the problem solving, and grateful to have the other commanders that are up here, and I'm looking at two more that are sitting in the audience here. So we each have authorities. We each have things that we contribute to the fight in terms of training, readiness, and our ability to deter or to fight and win if called upon. So continuing to work together and develop our ability to share information, share capabilities, and work together to focus our efforts is absolutely key. So again, grateful for the opportunity to be up here with these gentlemen and to work with a couple of the others in the audience. Thank you.
Thanks, General Dotula, for facilitating the conversation. Big thanks to the AFA for another amazing conference and conventions, and it's great to be up here on stage with some esteemed panelists. So for us, it's really about an opportunity to rehearse, right? General Schneider yesterday talked about when he, on his first assignment in an F-16 in Korea, he knew what his mission was coming right out of the gate. And so it's an opportunity for us to practice our first several moves, and that is easier said than done, right? So for us, we got to be able to project a healthy amount of forces across a vast distance, and then immediately flip to supporting your ability to employ those forces on arrival. And then we, of course, have to sustain the same forces. And so the other challenge for our team is we need to do that at the timing and tempo of General Schneider's concept of operations. And so that means our 618th AOC has got to be closely integrated with his 613th AOC so that we can deliver those effects at the right time with those pulsed operations. And then I'd say it's not enough for us to do it as a service, right? The more we can do at a joint level in support of, for us, United States Transportation Command, for you, Indo-PACOM, that has us basically delivering Air Force effects, but we also have to project, sustain, and employ the entirety of the joint force. So getting a good idea of what that looks like early is really what we're looking at to do with Mobility Guardian in 25 and Transcom's turbo distribution also in 25, getting sets and reps, just like you talked about, out of the way.
For each of you, training and exercising aren't just about fine-tuning our warfighting skills. There's also an element of deterrence involved. So could each of you kind of address that subject from the perspective of your commands, starting with you, General Schneider?
Yeah, great question. A former boss used to describe deterrence this way. Admittedly, it's an oversimplification, but it made sense to me, and I'll try to give it to you. You know, deterrence, is capability times willingness times messaging, and the emphasis was it's a multiplication problem, not an addition problem, because if any of those things is zero, deterrence is zero. So our ability to exercise, to train, to do things together factors into each one of those, capability, willingness, and messaging. And as mentioned yesterday, but I'll repeat it again, the fact that not only that we do this, to improve our capabilities, to make ourselves more agile, lethal, survivable, but we have great opportunity in the Indo-Pacific and in other parts of the world to bring in allies and partners. And the greater that we can build that team, the greater that we can build up, again, the capabilities, the willingness, and certainly the strategic messaging that goes along with presenting a united, a team, a network of allies and partners that have shared values, again, has an incredibly strong deterrent message.
So completely agree. Just piggybacking on that theme, the more capability and willingness we can demonstrate, the stronger the message, right? That multiplier kind of effect. And the same thing with the communication. We know an exercise in the Pacific, China's going to be watching, right? So the communication, the message is going to be sent. And when we can aggregate forces at scale with our allies and partners, that capability gets compounded. And the willingness, right? We're going to do that exercise during our free time, right? The will is absolutely there. And then the other thing we're looking at, you demonstrate strength to deter, and then you conceal some capabilities in order to win. And so we've got a healthy view on what we're going to show, what we're going to reveal, and what we're going to conceal to make sure that we can win when the time comes.
It's a fact that our combat air force is getting smaller and the Space Force is also too small. However, back to partners and allies, we have some benefits from a robust web of alliances and partnerships around the globe. Matter of fact, I think that's one of the key themes that has come out of the past several days. Could you explain how you're integrating training and exercises with our regional allies and partners within your respective commands? And General Snyder, you got a bunch of them out there, so what can you tell us?
Yeah, and General Deptula, I could probably suck up the remainder of the time and the remainder of the day, but I'll keep my points brief on this one. A couple of things in bold statements of the obvious. The United States Air Force does not have to lead every exercise. General Healy talked about RIMPAC and the integration with a Navy-led exercise. The United States military does not have to lead these exercises. I'm looking at Gus in the third row. What the Royal Australian Air Force did with exercise Pitch Black, 20 nations coming together, 145 or so aircraft, a fantastic training event. And the last piece is, you don't have to look like the United States Air Force to participate. The Philippines brought FA-50s to an event, not the same as an F-16, but these are complementary capabilities, and allies and partners don't necessarily have to look like us and don't have to have the same airplanes and the same capabilities. The door is open to find those complementary opportunities to work together and to build. So there are things that we will do at the high end, and there are things that we do with a specific focus. I look at the Red Flag Alaska events, and some of those are dedicated to some of the higher end capabilities and training. The next COPE North that we do in 2025 in Guam, so between the United States Air Force, the Koku Jaitai, and the Royal Australian Air Force is going to have a very specific F-35 focus to build up that interoperability and capability. The bottom line is, the door is open. And continues to be open. More and more allies and partners are willing to work with us and do things with us. And at the same time, we have to, again, take a look at everything that they bring and continue to bring them into the fold, which we're doing.
So we're working on both the tactical and the operational level. We're lucky to have a couple of allies embedded in our squadrons at the tactical level, and then we invite the allies to work bilateral training with the Army at Pope, Fort Liberty, Fort Johnson, and a couple other places too. We also have an air mobility operations wing in the Pacific and one in Europe, and they've got a lot more persistent touch points with the allies and partners, which is really helpful from a C2 perspective, aerial port and maintenance, doing maintenance on each other's airplanes. And then coming up to the operational level, big exercises like Mobility Guardian. We started this journey back in 2017, invited about 7 allies to fly with us. And that, at the time, was a service level exercise. We had another 12 that we're observing. Last year in Mobility Guardian 23, 6 allies flying interdependent with us, right? Complete interoperability. We're doing maintenance on their airplanes. They're doing maintenance on ours. We're putting our aeromedical evacuation teams on the back of their airplanes, and they're responding in kind. And so that's where we're tackling it at the operational level. And we'll do that again here, Mobility Guardian 25, out in the Pacific with General Snyder's team.
General LaMontagne, here's one for you. As the Air Force reoptimizes for great power competition, obviously it's got to transition from a mindset of operating from large bases to many more smaller locations. Could you share with the audience your perspectives on how Air Mobility Command's doing that?
So it does create a number of challenges, especially for one set of our forces. And there's another challenge with the vast distances that we need to cover down in the Pacific. And so, In last year, we did some experimentation. The leadership team basically worked through max endurance operations. So we put 2 crews on an airplane so we could project that power further and faster than we otherwise would be able to. And then we could turn it to employ and support his team very, very quickly. As far as the small bases go, less of a problem for the airlift fleet. C-17s can go into a dirt strip 3,500 feet. C-130s even smaller. But for the tanker force, we need a little more runway, a little more capability with a fuel distribution, handled as well in coordination with Defense Logistics Agency. And then what we're working through and continue to work through is at those smaller bases, they're probably going to become more disconnected and more isolated because of the lack of a full PACE plan when it comes to communication. So the importance of having that mission command and mission type orders, so when that team is disconnected at that small base, they know exactly what's expected of them to fly, fight, and win and support General Snyder's team.
You are airmen stationed in the Indo-Pacific. Obviously, you're going to have to generate combat sorties under attack. So how are you training to prepare our airmen in your theater to do that?
Yeah, and a lot of that falls under agile combat employment, how we disaggregate our force for survivability and then our ability to reaggregate to bring lethal effects. And it is a team effort, and there's a piece of it, we can't move around without support from Air Mobility Command and others. So there's, as unpredictable as we try to be for the adversary, there's a predictability that we owe to the rest of the force so that they can support us. And it's not just here about those of us that wear similar uniforms. I also have that communication and that dialogue with the Army. Again, we're probably going to similar locations in the Western Pacific. There are capabilities that they bring, there are capabilities that we can provide back and forth and integration for integrated air and missile defense. So our ability to work together as a team and not just do planning in stovepipes makes us all more effective. So again, going back to agile combat employment, we have a concept of operations for the entirety of the United States Air Force. But within our commands, and I'm looking at General Hecker, the way he executes in Europe is a little bit different than the way we will have to execute in the Indo-Pacific. So as we develop task orgs and execution orgs in the specifics of how we're going to get at the business of doing what we need to do for agile combat employment, that is not just specific to Pacific Air Forces. It involves everyone here on the stage as well as others to make sure that we are all combining resources, going in the right direction, and again, being able to complement what we're doing.
Okay, good. This is going to be the last question and a bit of a lightning round, given the time to 45 seconds each. The Air and Space Force's ops tempo obviously is dramatically increased. And both the Air and Space Force were actively engaged in ops around the globe. So how do each of you prioritize exercising and training amongst all the other tasks that you're charged to accomplish?
I'm not sure I can answer that in 45 seconds. It is a fine balance. And I talked to the wing commanders, exercises are great. We build skill sets, we build interoperability, and there's a lot to be gained. There's also a burn that is associated with exercises. And it does take time to reconstitute to accomplish the training events that you couldn't accomplish during exercises to get the fleet healthy again. So for us, as we continue to do more, we have to take a hard look at the prioritization and then understand the impacts of readiness, because we do not know when the next crisis is going to happen, and we have got to be on our toes for all of that. Other than to say, it is an ongoing focus item just to make sure that we lean forward as hard as we can to make sure that, but at the same time, we don't consume too much of our force to give us the opportunities to respond.
Very briefly, on any given day, the requirements for our team are about right here, and our capability, capacity is about right here. We get a lot of help from the Guard and Reserve to make up the difference. So sometimes, say, McCord wants some white space to do some training. We may have to surge Charleston, Dover, McGuire in order to carve out that white space for them to get those touches. We might have to surge the rest of the team.
For us, we got to make sure that if we're prioritizing an exercise, we've got to get more out of just exercise to exercise. It's got to be a certification event. It's got to be allies and partners. I get complaints from my NAF commanders. All we're doing is exercising. Again, recovering J7, we're going to continue to do that, and we're going to continue to press to make sure that these are worthwhile exercises that move the ball forward.
It's
You got a
pretty
minute
simple
and
for
14
us.
seconds. You're
Sorry,
good.
sir.
You got a minute and 14 seconds.
Oh, let me just relax for a moment and think about this. No, I guess I would say it's pretty simple for us, sir. All the commanders are empowered to defer exercises that they don't view as readiness generating. They have a battle rhythm associated with their force jet model that they brief to me every month. I get a detailed readiness review every 6 months, and we do a commit assessment prior to every combat crew across every mission area going in. So we have started to get to the standards I think we're going to continue to refine, but we started to get there. If in the course of their force generation cycle, we come up with events, and we've had a few, where a Delta commander feels like this is not a readiness generating event, there are no learning objectives that satisfy any of my requirements to meet a UCOM or PACOM requirement, we don't send a force element to go. And that has generated some hurt feelings reports, which are my job to receive. But I think that has also disciplined our structure. And now I keep coming back to our sourcing and prioritization conference, but that's where they got to come to. And we built a schedule. We trained that schedule. We built some capacity because the CSO doesn't want us to exhaust it all, and I'm sure the service secretary would strangle me if I did the same. We built some capacity to react if we have short notice requirements or if there's a security cooperation event that must be supported. But this is something that I think we have gotten a better handle on over the last 6 to 8 months. And with the partnerships we're starting to build, it's only going to be better because we'll have service components in each one of the combatant commands who really understand those requirements to a level that I won't be able to get in Colorado Springs.